decisions aren't necessarily just made by the patient, but rather by the head of the family, which even to this day in 2023 is often the father or other male figure in the family.
So we know that stigma, when it comes to the epilepsies, is rampant. And today, neurologist Joseph Sirven of the Mayo Clinic speaks of it specifically amongst the Cuban-American and Latino communities of the US, and how through his work, including the Brain and Life en Español magazine, is challenging this.
I am a Cuban-American, first of my family born in the United States. They left Cuba in the mid-1960s. And so the Latino world has been a very important part. Well, it's part of my identity, but it's been an important aspect of always feeling like to give back. I spoke Spanish with my family, my parents, aunts, uncles, and English with my brothers and sisters as I grew up in Louisiana, a very complicated world. But I always felt like I wanted to give back. One of the things I did as a neurologist that I'm currently involved now is I'm editor-in-chief of Brain and Life en Español. That's the American Academy of Neurology's public-directed magazine written in Spanish to try to provide help, if you will, as it comes to neurological conditions. So the Latino population is very important, particularly the ones with seizures. If there's a lot of stigma in non-Latino populations, there's lots of stigma with seizures and epilepsy in Latino populations. There's still miseducation, misinformation that's very rampant when it comes to this. And so it's very, very difficult in terms of just trying to kind of get messages across when it comes to this.
Can you explain for the ignorant or lay people people unfamiliar with the Latino community, why or how does stigma differ between Latino communities and non-Latino communities in general?
One of the things is that you do a lot of work to try to lessen the scare factor. I mean, there's a lot of stigma on both ends, Latino, non-Latino. But I'd say in the Latino culture, oftentimes there's even an overinflated element of stigma. There's a sense of perhaps of a spiritual connection that's causing this, a sense of contagiousness. Those are things we always are trying to dispel. And perhaps that's there in the non-Latino populations, but it's definitely one of the things that we notice very clearly when it comes to this group. And so it's super important to kind of do the education.
And so how do you go about that? Because I mean, I'm a huge fan of education, and think it can be really, quite frankly, exciting when it comes to the epilepsies, because we have so much new data out there, like much of it we can't understand yet, but, and people with real passion, working to find out new treatments to improve quality of life, etc. How do you communicate all of that to the Latino community?
There's two ways. One of them is by the fact how I mentioned of what I do with the magazine. One of them is to direct it to those who speak Spanish primarily, to do it within language. So you definitely have to be very prepared to kind of offer the language, to present material in the language that they're most comfortable with. That's one. The second thing is you have to understand, even though I hate to kind of call all Latino culture the same, given it's a diaspora involving countries all over the world.
Yeah.
So I want to be very careful and cautious. Nonetheless, some of the things that that we note is oftentimes that it is a paternalistic directed culture. That is, the grandfather, the father, they tend to have an outsized role in decision making. And you definitely sometimes have to make sure, I guess, to be clear on this, you definitely have to make sure that when you're communicating information and educating information on this topic, that you have more than just the patient in mind, but you have the family in mind, because the decisions aren't necessarily just made by the patient, but rather by the head of the family, which even to this day in 2023 is often the father or other male figure in the family.
I hadn't heard that before. And things like this are really important for clinicians to understand, I think. Well, and equally, other people with an epilepsy, who we can have a global community, but I think we need to have a better understanding of what challenges other people go through.
It's another reminder that you're not just treating the person, you're kind of treating the community. And that's kind of a different mindset. Certainly, clearly a different mindset here in the States, where, it's all about individual freedoms and everything's about the ultimate person as the person in front of you. And that's absolutely true. But if the decisions are made by everyone else influencing it, you want to make a change for pragmatic sake, you have to include the other folks. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. And it's just another reminder that the decisions that ultimately lead to your health or lack of health are often they reside on little decisions like this, which is, do I talk to the rest of the family? Do I address the rest of the situation? And it's just kind of important to kind of have that grander or holistic view. Not that I have all the answers, but that's what I'm learning at this point.
Amongst your colleagues and other clinicians around the US, are you teaching other people to think in a similar way for their generally their Latino patients?
I try to, and I try to do my best in that regard. I'm not. What's hard though, it's just one person here, and you try to tell people who are very busy clinicians out in the world. Time is such a premium these days, that I hope that's the message we try to drive home. I don't know if we always do, but it is one of those areas that does come up a lot.
Well, anyone listening to this, we have about 2,000 downloads a month. Share it. We all need to know what, and empathize with what other people are going through, no matter our heritage or our background, whatever. We're all Homo sapiens and we can empathize with one another. Just sometimes I think, as you're saying, we need to look at things just from a slightly different angle so that we have an understanding of what people are processing, I guess.
I absolutely agree. It's you definitely have to get within the culture and the mindset of the person you're helping. Easier said than done often, but nonetheless, I think it's a truism that maybe has just not been fully valued.
Well, it sounds wonderful to me. I thank you so very much for your time. It's really been great, Joe, and you're inspiring for patients and clinicians alike. So everyone, make sure that you follow Joe. He's all over social media, and you've got your podcast. What's it called again?
It's called What's Health Got to Do with It? We had a producer who loved Tina Turner, who doesn't. And so we've basically played with the title. It airs on NPR radio here in North Florida on weekends, but releases a podcast anywhere you get your podcast. So What's Health Got to Do with It? And it's always a pleasure. And Torie, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much to Joe for his great insight into how the epilepsies can affect some people of the Cuban-American and Latino communities of the US. Let us continue to learn more about each other's cultures, perspectives, challenges, differences, similarities, and provide empathy and support to those affected by the epilepsies.